I don't have my usual headset, so I'm having to hold the mic up. Please, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me. If somebody can't hear me, please type something in that you can't hear me, because I want to make sure everyone can hear me. So I'll give a minute to make sure everyone can hear me. Okay, good. It sounds like everybody can hear me. So let's get started. I just want to take a minute to talk about what this presentation is and what it's not. So it is definitely nutritional advice and helpful tips for species-appropriate nutrition. And our goal is to help you help your pet stay as healthy as they can for as long as possible through optimal, not minimal nutrition. But it's not a how-to guide to making your own homemade diets. This is sometimes a complex process if you're not using some of the pre-made supplement mixes that exist. So the definition of food is any nourishing substance that is eaten, drunk, or otherwise taken into the body to sustain life, provide energy, or promote growth. So what is a species-appropriate diet? Well, the answer is it depends on the species. So for the cat, since the cat is an obligate carnivore, the cat must consume meat to survive. This is because cats cannot produce certain amino acids that can only be found in meat. And cats also lack the ability to digest starches effectively, so they do not do well on a high carbohydrate diet. Now, the dog, on the other hand, there's some controversy over whether the dog is something called an omnivore, which readily eats both meat and plants, or a facultative carnivore. And facultative means optional or discretionary, but I'm kind of in more of the camp that the dog is a facultative carnivore, because while dogs can effectively digest starches and other carbohydrates, given the choice, they will always choose meat over the plant because it helps them thrive better. Let's take a minute to talk about the dog and cat digestive system and how it's different from ours, and we'll start with the mouth. Some of these differences are obvious. And so the dentition, which is the teeth. The difference in canines, molars, and premolars between us omnivores and the carnivore. Carnivorous canines are long and sharp. Their premolars and molars are also sharp because they're made for shearing muscle and connective tissue, and their jaw muscles tend to be very thick and strong. So in contrast, the canines, premolars, and molars of the omnivore are actually a little bit closer to herbivorous or plant-eating animals such as cows and sheep. So cats do not have an enzyme called salivary amylase, which helps to digest starches starting in the mouth. Cats also have lower activity of certain other digestive enzymes important for digesting carbohydrates, things like maltase, isomaltase, and sucrase, as well as they have very little amylase coming from their pancreas and certain other enzymes, one made by the liver called glucokinase. So cats cannot synthesize enough of the precursors to the amino acid arginine, so they must have a sufficient amount of this in their diet, and really the only way to get arginine is through meat. The length of the dog and cat digestive system is very different than the length of herbivores, those plant-eating animals, or even omnivores. So it's much shorter. The pH of the stomach of a properly fed carnivore is between 1 and 2, but when they're fed a diet high in starches, the pH can go as high as 4. And the low pH or the high acidity actually protects them from various different things, such as potentially things like leptospirosis, which would be acquired orally. So this slide just illustrates the difference in the length of their digestive system of various different species. So it's in ratio to the length of the body. And the dog, it's 6 times the length of their body. For the cat, it's only 4 times the length of their body. For humans, ours are 10 times the length of our body. And for the herbivores, things like cows, sheep, and such, it's 20 times the length of their body. I want to tell you guys a little bit about how dry dog and cat food is made, because it's made by a process called extrusion, which is similar to the way cereal is made. During extrusion, the ingredients are subject to very high temperatures, from 160 degrees up to 400 degrees, as well as placed under very high pressure. And this process results in destruction of and/or changes to some of the nutrients naturally contained within the food ingredients. And many of these naturally occurring nutrients, they're just destroyed during all the pulverizing, processing, cooking, and preserving. Oh, there's a cat up here. And these nutrients must be added back in synthetic form then to make the diet nutritionally complete. So this can create some disadvantages because synthetic nutrients are not as easily absorbed by the body, and despite kibble's long shelf life, synthetic nutrients are actually less shelf stable, and they can be destroyed during storage or shipping. And sometimes the artificial preservatives in kibble may also cause health problems. Things such as BHA or BHT may even contribute to cancer. And this goes actually for human cereals as well. So look and make sure your cereal is not preserved with BHA or BHT if you eat cereal. Well, the high temperature used in extrusion in the short time frame to process, typically under 5 minutes, create continuous chemical and physical alterations to the ingredient mixture. And these changes include starch gelatinization, inactivation of nutritionally active factors, protein denaturation, and vitamin loss. All dry pet foods have to contain starch because starch is necessary for the formation of the kibble. And when these ingredients are exposed to heat and moisture during the extrusion process, the starch melts, which means that it gelatinizes. And this helps bind the kibble, but also causes expansion of the product as it travels through the die, which is something that cuts it into those small chunks. Just a little note about rice. Extruded rice causes a much higher glucose and insulin response than other extruded starches like barley, corn, wheat, or sorghum. So just be really careful with this in any kind of diabetic or overweight animals. I also wanted to just tell you a little bit about something called brewer's rice because it seems to be very common ingredient in especially some of the lower quality dry foods. Brewer's rice is a very low quality ingredient. Brewer's rice it's what's left over after conventional rice is milled, like bits and pieces. And so it's a processed rice product that's missing many of the nutrients that can be found in some things such as whole grain brown rice. So while no rice is best, if you have to feed your pet a food containing rice, it should at least be whole brown rice, though I really am not keen too much on either. So nutritionally active factors in grains. Grains and legumes, including corn, wheat, soy, and rice, that used in many dry foods, contain certain nutritionally active factors that actually can interfere with digestion. And these include protease inhibitors, trypsinase inhibitors, and amylase inhibitors, as well as lectins. The first three of these are digestive enzyme inhibitors. And lectins are proteins that bind to sugars within the digestive system and prevent their digestion. And these evolved as the plant's defense mechanism against digestion of the seed. So you would think that inactivation of these is a good thing, right? Not necessarily. The presence of these is part of what limits the amount of grain that can be used in some of these foods. So because they're inactivated during extrusion, a higher ratio of grains to meat can be used in these foods, and grains are much cheaper than actual meat protein. Protein sources used in dry pet food formulas are often a combination of animal and vegetable because of the less costly vegetable proteins. They don't contain the appropriate amounts of amino acids to satisfy the nutritional needs of dogs and cats. Heat irreversibly denatures proteins. This means that the chemical structure is altered. The tertiary or the folding bonds are damaged, though the molecular content remains the same. And this results in some loss of biological activity. Denaturation modifies the structures of protein, as we just saw. In the case of plant-based proteins like soy and corn, denaturation makes these biologically inappropriate foods actually easier for pets to digest. But denaturation is only beneficial to meat-based proteins if the protein sources are substandard to begin with, meaning that they're rendered something like a meat meal or a chicken byproduct meal, which are low-quality ingredients. The definition of render is to process as for industrial use. And rendered proteins are processed using high heat, usually between 240 to 290 degrees Fahrenheit. During rendering, the raw materials, which may include fat, skin, feathers, beaks, feet, are all run through a continuous cooker dryer at high temperatures. Water and fat are removed. This helps to preserve and extend the shelf life. The final product is a ground either meat meal or meat byproduct meal. And these rendered products are difficult for dogs and cats to digest. So again, the denaturation actually makes them more digestible. However, digestibility does not equate with biological availability and usability. When nutrients are digested but unable to be utilized, it results in larger stool volume. The vitamins most sensitive to the extrusion process are vitamin A and vitamin E from the fat-soluble vitamins, and vitamin C, B1, and B9 from the water-soluble vitamins. Oops. That slide was supposed to have an animation. The amount of loss varies greatly and is somewhat dependent on the temperature at which the extrusion takes place. And loss can be as high as 87% for vitamin C, 62% for B1, which is thiamine, and 40 to 44% for other B vitamins. As far as vitamin A, the loss usually ranges from 27 to 62%. Let's take a minute to talk about canned food. So for canned food, the ingredients are ground and mixed in a similar way to dry, but the temperatures required are much lower. The highest temperature that canned food is cooked to is about 250 degrees to ensure that Clostridium botulinum is killed. A high carbohydrate content necessitates higher cooking temperatures to ensure the starch gelatinizes. There's no drying step, so canned food contains about 4 times the moisture as dry. But vitamin loss can still be substantial, and at least one study showed thiamine and folic acid loss of up to 90%. Again, so then these are added back in synthetic form, which may not be as usable by the body. I have to say about cats and dry diets. Dry diets are never recommended for cats, because cats have a low thirst drive and they experience mild dehydration on dry diets. This dehydration causes their urine to be very concentrated, and this, as well as the high starch content, predisposes them to urinary crystals and obstructions in males. The excess carbohydrate leads to obesity and other health problems. And the cat also cannot effectively digest many of these starches. So please do not feed your cat a dry food diet. If your cat is on dry food, please contact us and we can help advise you on how to transition them if you come see us. So what about homemade diets? Well, homemade diets are perfectly acceptable. They're even desirable, provided that they are balanced and nutritionally complete. This means they must provide the proper calcium-phosphorus ratio and proper amount of vitamins and minerals that your pet requires. There are many resources available to help you do this. There's actually a new computer program coming out for veterinarians that is going to help me help any of you that might want to make your own pet's homemade diet, make sure that it's properly balanced using all whole foods and not necessarily needing any premixes. So contact us if you are interested in that. So how can you feed your dog or cat the most appropriate diet? Well, there are several options. Some companies will grind up the whole prey. There's a couple companies that are doing this. One is called Hair Today. Another is called My Pet Carnivore. There are plenty of pre-made raw balanced diets. Many brands, Primal, Stella and Chewy's, Bravo, Nature's Variety, etc. Most of these are available at your pet boutique places, and others you can have delivered to your home. There's freeze-dried raw. This is a little less preferable for cats unless you're rehydrating it and giving them that moisture that they need to get with their food. There are some other options. There are pre-made kind of powdered / ground up diets that can be rehydrated and supplement mixes. These are minimally processed. They're dehydrated mixes, and they're either the diets are pre-made, already completely balanced, or the premix to which you just add the meat is already balanced to make sure it complements the meat and makes a nutritionally complete diet. Because protein is the most expensive ingredient, some of these premixes may be more cost effective, and you get to control the quality of protein that your pet eats. There's another option for cats called TC Feline. It's currently only available in limited areas, and it's a premix so that you add the protein. Nutrition gobbledygook. There are companies with keen executives and our lax FDA that use many words to try to make their food sound more appealing. But what do these terms really mean? We don't have time to go into all of them, so I chose 5 that I feel are really misused by companies and are misunderstood by consumers. We'll start with premium. So products labeled as premium or gourmet are not required to contain any different or higher quality ingredients, nor are they held up to any higher nutritional standards than are any other complete and balanced products. So basically, this word means nothing. Natural. There's no official definition for the word natural, but it can be construed as equivalent to the lack of artificial flavors, colors, or artificial preservatives in the product. Natural ingredients may still be processed, and beware of the term natural flavor, which can mean that a diet has mostly synthetic ingredients but contains certain natural flavors. Chicken, beef, salmon, whatever the meat source is, this term means so if a food is labeled as any specific protein, it must contain, that protein must comprise 95% of the product minus the moisture by weight. If the protein has a companion, such as fish and potato, then those 2 ingredients must comprise 95% of the product minus the moisture by weight. Dinner. When you see dinner, it means that the named protein must make up at least 25% minus the water or moisture, but less than 95% of the product by weight. However, many dinner foods will contain other proteins. Flavored. With respect to flavors, pet foods often contain digests, which are materials treated with heat, enzymes, and/or acids to form concentrated natural flavors. Only a small amount of a chicken digest is needed to produce a chicken-flavored cat food, even though no actual chicken's added to the food. So what should you feed? It's all so confusing. Well, the answer is very simple. Feed the least processed diet that fits in with your lifestyle and budget. However, knowing that whole unprocessed foods are better, it's better to feed 50% of the time raw, freeze-dried raw, or home-cooked, and 50% of the time dry. if it's not feasible to feed raw or freeze-dried or home-cooked 100% of the time. Learn to read ingredient labels and what the terms mean. For more information, AFCO does have a consumer website. I've listed the link here for you. If you must feed canned or dry food, make sure that meat is the first ingredient, not water, not broth, or a meat meal. Remember that dry food is never appropriate for cats. So what if your pet has allergies? Well, I would encourage you to view my webinar on natural and integrative treatment of allergies. But again, feeding the least processed diet that fits in with your lifestyle and budget, because processed foods create more inflammation and will make your pet's allergies worse. Are there any questions? I'll hang out for a few more minutes. Hope I didn't go too fast. I think Honest Kitchen is great. I would recommend perhaps switching the protein up a little bit. So if you're feeding chicken for a while, maybe switch to beef for a while, or turkey or something else. I always feel like Jeopardy when I'm waiting for the questions. Someone is asking, can you feed an 8 to 12-week-old puppy raw? Yes, absolutely you can. If they're not used to eating raw, you want to introduce it slowly, feeding just a very little bit as a snack. They have to develop the proper pH in their stomach, and if you feed it to them all at once, you're just asking for digestive upset. So feed a little bit as a snack for a few days. Once they have adjusted to that, you can replace one meal and then do one meal for 3 to 5 days. And then if everything is good, no diarrhea or anything, you can switch them completely over. Sorry, I've got 3 cats in the room here with me, and one of them's trying to get out. Oh. Oh, thank you. Is it possible to? Yes, the webinar will be recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel, usually within a couple days. The only reason why there was a delay with the previous webinar was because we had some editing issues because of the technical difficulties. So it looks like 1 or 2 people more are typing. Oh, you're welcome. So join us next month on the last Tuesday of the month. I don't have the date right now, but we're going to be talking about thyroid disease. So dogs get thyroid disease, cats get thyroid disease. They get different kinds of thyroid disease, but we'll be talking about thyroid disease in both of those species. Oh, great, Diane. You got your kitten on raw and stopped the diarrhea. All right. I'll hang around for one more, and then we'll probably be signing off. Oh, okay. All right. One client very happy with My Pet Carnivore, so 1 vote for My Pet Carnivore. Yep, I've heard. I just lost my video. That sounds like seems like maybe a good place to stop. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hope you'll join us next month, and have a good night.